Hey guys, welcome to SIH monthly webinar series, March. So happy. This is actually my second time guest on this series. The first time Derek came on, he absolutely crushed it on email forwarding, email hacking, everything related to email. Something that I've been really passionate about every time Derek has helped me, I was like, Derek, you have to actually teach other people how to do this. Every single time, I'm like, you're absolutely amazing at this. You do this better than I've ever seen by anybody else. And finally, Derek stole my idea for him and launched an actual program that actually walks you through every step of the way. So I was like, Derek, I got to have you back on. Let's do part 2 to that webinar. He graciously agreed. So we're going to avoid the introduction. You can always catch the first episode or catch any one of Derek's material that's out there. He puts out quite a good amount of content. So I'm fortunate enough to call Derek a partner of mine. More importantly, I'm privileged enough to call him my friend. And so I'm really happy that he's here today. His time is really precious. We'll know why, because he had the time block for this event. There's some inside jokes there, but I'm gonna hand it over to Derek. He's gonna give a little bit more about what we're gonna go over today. Derek, I believe I made you co-host, so you should be able to present as of now and take it away.
Awesome. Hey, Dennis, first of all, the honor is all mine. I'm just so blessed with the relationships that we've been able to procure over the past 2 years, 2 or 3 years or something, with the group that we got involved with early on in the middle of COVID, I believe. And it's been great to get to know you and work with you. And you have so much great information for the group, for us. I think everyone already knows that, though, because everyone's listening to this knows that Dennis really brings the goods. He's got books, and I was there helping, or not helping, but just watching him have this go from a glimmer in his eye to actually be a book in his hand, which was super, super cool to watch that journey and then see him grow as an investor like we've been growing together. And so it's an honor to come on and share some topics with you guys, or share some tips. So for today, what I wanted to do is, last time we talked about emails, right? Because emails they're your, how should I call this? They're your border or your gatekeeper to the outside world, right? The outside world wants to get to you in a bunch of ways. And if you don't have rules or procedures to help filter and stop and have rules for who can interact with you when, you're going to get overridden. You're going to have too much stuff on your plate to do eventually over time. So what I'd like to do is, I like to make the claim that with my systems and tools, you can turn your workday from an 8-hour day, if that's what you work, down into about 3 or 4 with the help of a virtual assistant, or even just you yourself, if you're super focused and not spending time switching between tasks and just being more efficient in general. So last time we spoke about emails, and in my course, I have a whole bunch of different topics. And what I'd like to do is, I'd like to do a real quick crash course and see how much we can get done within a half an hour or so that Dennis or anyone else can ask some questions here. But basically, you're going to have in this one, we're going to talk about calendars, how to approach time, because if your ultimate goal is to eventually shrink an 8-hour day down to 3 or 4, you got to have a place to actually keep track of that goal, right? Which is going to be your calendar. So we're going to be looking at the calendar, and then I'm going to be giving you an alternate way to look at task tracking, because I know that a very popular topic that Dennis was actually referring to before was time blocking. And while that there is a place for that, I'm not a huge fan of time blocking to a point. I think that it works well to help you organize and block off your calendar so people can't book it. Or if you have time commitments that you need to implement where you're either out and about or traveling or otherwise are not available, right? So I think that's an important distinction to make. But what I'm going to show you right now is I'm going to show you my general approach to how I look at calendars. And so what I'm going to do is, first, I'm going to share my screen here. So give me just a second and I'll open up the screen. So here you guys should see my screen, or maybe there we go in just a second. In general, I have 3 different blocks of time that I like to use, right? I have a self-care block. So that is, for me, this miracle morning. And as soon as I wake up, this is the first thing that I do. I'll take care of myself by exercising, meditating, doing some journaling, getting my breakfast, taking a shower, like getting all of those things done for my self-care routine and getting me set up for the rest of the day. That's something that's very clearly important time for you to do. If you have kids and stuff, that's the time that it takes for you to get them ready and get them off to school or get them to their next to their appointments. And then right after that, I have a focus time block. Okay. And in general, you can see that there's a few exceptions here just because we're getting ready to travel. But in general, I keep any time after my self-care block, I keep that to myself at generally about noon every day. That's what I like to do. I keep my stuff open until noon so that way I can focus on the things that I want to focus on. That's just for my business. It's working on my business. And then I have a lunch break or I've got empty space. And then I have a Calendly set up that opens me up to the rest of the day in the afternoons. And that is when I can do all of my office hours. So I have 3 types of hours. I've got self-care hours, I've got focus hours, and then I've got office hours. And in the office hours, you can still work on your focus hours and do stuff that's on your focus that would help you and your business. But the important thing is to know that there's 3 blocks of time and they have different priorities for you. Obviously, your number 1 block needs to be self-care. You and your family, that's really important. And I know that a lot of people may be working to live, but you got to take care of yourself if you're going to be able to focus and then work really hard for other people. So number 1 priority is working on the self-care. Number 2 priority is the focus part. This is when you are intentionally working on creating. You're looking to set goals for your business, right? Or maybe you're just accomplishing tasks that only you can do in your business. And so that's what I like to do. So for my focus hour, you can see it's not really called out here in my calendar. But if you wanted to, you could very easily set something up that says focus time. And if you wanted to, you could just go in here and make it repeat so that you're doing this every single weekday or even every single Saturday as well. And then have it never end. And then you can have this be from 8:30 to 12:30. And then now you're protecting your time here. But what I wanted to implore to all of you guys is that what doesn't work is taking a task or something that you need to do and dropping it down as a time block on here. Because what's going to happen is over time, you're going to have a whole bunch of these time blocks, like for a task that's just going to keep moving out and out, right? Or you're going to miss it. You're going to be on vacation or you're going to be sick and you're going to blow past that, right? And you're not even going to see it and you're just going to forget about it. So what I recommend for all of the tasks that you need to do in your business, I recommend using a program like Asana. You don't have to use Asana, but I highly recommend it. And you can see here, this is what my Asana thing looks like. I like this because I'm basically able to take all of this and I can take any task that I have in my inbox and I can use that to essentially assign over to my virtual assistant. So again, you got this over here where you've got your focus time, your self-care time, and then you have office hours. And that's the third thing I wanted to talk about was office hours. Inside of office hours, right? This is the time that you set apart for you to have all of your meetings throughout the day. So that's why, like for me, I like to have my focus time in the morning because my brain is freshest in the morning. If you are freshest in the evening, then maybe you have your self-care in the morning and maybe a self-care break in the afternoon. And then you have your office hours in the morning or your office hours in the early afternoon. And then you set aside your focus time for you to do your best when you're most clear and open and available and ready mentally to be able to tackle your tasks. So you can have multiple focus times, but the idea is to block that out so that nothing can penetrate that as much as possible, right? You want to have something that's repeatable and scalable and something that you can really stick to over time. Okay. So I hope that helped. I don't know, maybe does that answer your, how does that sit with you here?
I like it. I think I'm guilty of, like you said, just putting the events into the calendar versus like holding the time block sacred. Right. It's harder than it seems to protect that time block. Yeah. It's almost, to me, that's the hardest part is like that time block. Like the way you have Miracle Morning Block, that's really my time to get my kids to school. Mm-hmm. And that takes a lot of my mental brain power where it's almost going through with the kids. I know focus time should be next because if the focus time is not next, like I was making the mistake of doing my meetings right after getting my kids to school. And I found myself mentally drained after my kids and my meetings where I wasn't getting anything done after that. So what do you do in terms of like your Miracle Morning Block? Is that strategic where that's not using your brain power, where you're still fresh for focus time? Can you go a little bit into some of that like
Yeah.
mindset of what to put where in this
Sure.
thing.
Yeah. Again, like there's a ton of ways to slice this, but basically what it boils down to is whenever you are the sharpest, that's where you want your focus time to be. So if you first wake up, for instance, right? Let's say you wake up and your kids need to get ready for school at 7 o'clock, right? And between 7 and 9, that's when you're carting them to school and then you're driving them back or whatever you do to help get them ready. Then it may be the case that your focus block is one of the first things that you do when you wake up. Maybe you have a like a miracle morning, like maybe you do an exercise routine for 30 minutes, right? You wake up on time, you have the 30 minutes to get yourself woken up, right? Like maybe you do jumping jacks or you follow like a Beachbody program or something, right? That's actually what we do because it's very regimented. It's the same time every day. And it's like a course, a full course. And so we just follow that every day. And that it's a varied thing. It's really cool. I recommend that for sure. And then after that, maybe after you're done exercising, maybe you just go straight into your focus work. Maybe you spend an hour working on this before you have to get your kids up and ready to go, right? Then once you have your kids ready to go, then maybe after they're gone, you come back and you resume your focus time, right? Maybe what could happen is that when your first hour of focus time, while you're getting your kids ready, you can still process things, right, in your head. If you're able to get your kids ready, but you still have some stuff going on in your head, you may be to actually get some more stuff done or processed or prioritize. And then when you finally come back to the workday, you want to be able to continue working on that focus time. But in general, it just boils down to when are you feeling the sharpest? That's pretty much what it is for me. And so you want to be able to block that time so that you are serving you and your business with your prime amount of energy, right? And your prime focus throughout the day, throughout the daily cycle and the weekly cycle. Sometimes I forgot to mention too, Dennis, sometimes you should take an entire day off, right? You're not seeing that here in this, but for this last quarter. But generally what I would do is I would take off Mondays and Tuesdays or just Tuesdays and Fridays or something. And you just block the day so that the entire day is a focus day. That's something you can do also. It just depends on what your rhythms are throughout the day. But for me, I know that I have lots of podcasts to shoot. I have lots of meetings that I got to have with my partners and with potential investors and things like that. So the fact of the matter is that I don't have that luxury to be able to do that, especially when we're getting ready for a big trip, which is coming up here in about a couple of days, less than a week. But what I would say is that you can block an entire day for yourself, and that is really helpful. Like Tuesdays, for instance, is usually my block days. So you can see that there's not too much on Tuesdays, pretty much everywhere throughout my whole calendar. Like I won't let anyone book anything on Calendly on Tuesdays because those days are me. But Mondays and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is fair game, and even parts of Saturday as well.
Now, do you subscribe to the notion of protecting your focus time with email time an hour before, an hour later? So I forgot if it was the one thing, but there was a book that really stresses it out because what happens is it's like you're saying you're doing focus time, but then you're just answering emails.
Yeah.
And you're not really doing high priority. I believe it was one thing because that's the most recent thing. I think his strategy was that if your focus time is at 9, at 8 o'clock, you're spending an hour just crushing emails. And then maybe at 5, you're spending an hour crushing. It might have been actually the 12 work week year.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think it's that second book.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah, because I think the one thing is very high level. But in any event, what I wanted to bring here is the way that I do it, Dennis, and I guess I have this luxury. My email inbox looks like this all the time. Let me go to my inbox. It's at 0 red, and I have all of my emails that I need to. This is how I wake up to it. Yeah, there's some unread, right? There's like maybe a handful of unread emails, but this is why I have the email thing first, so that when you wake up, you don't have to go in and start, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like the first thing I look at is I glance at this in my focus time. And then what I really do is Asana. This is what I glance at. Okay. So I have 2 different task lists, right? And I know that in getting things done, you should be centralizing everything into one place. The reason that I don't centralize absolutely everything in one place, which is Asana, is because some of these things will take me not a long time to write as soon as I get some information or I get some time to be able to do it, right? So here's how I think about it. If something comes in and it will take you 30 seconds to do, just do it. If you see the email come in and it takes you 30 seconds for you to respond, take that time as soon as you see the email, when you open it up first thing on your focus, just go ahead and knock that out. Just send it out, right? No reason to wait. If it's going to take you 2 minutes or more to respond, right? Meaning you need to think about this or you need to check something before you send it out, star it. Okay. You star it. So that way you just need to go in and check something and then I'll send it. You can see here that the vast majority of these stars are from earlier today, which is I'll get to tomorrow. I just need to check one thing or I need to send something and then I can send it out, right? Send out a response. If it's going to take 2 hours or more of your time, that's when you're going to go in here, right? Let's say, for instance, I see this and I'm like, oh, cool, Denver, 4 units for 500,000 a unit, which is not what I'm going to say, but that's just in case that's what I would, if I was theoretically saying that, then I have this plugin over here where I can actually import it very easily to Asana. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to create a new task, right? And then I'm basically going to send this with the email and all, with this pictures and everything, into a centralized place for me to process and actually do something with it, because it will become a project. This email, when I see this, I'm like, oh, I need to underwrite this, right? Then I will send it over to Asana so that I can have it underwritten and I can delegate it to someone else to have it underwritten for me. I think we may have talked about this in the email section quickly.
We did.
But
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that you guys just get a quick rundown of what that looks like in my email inbox. So to answer your question, in my focus time, yes, I do glance at my email, but I have the luxury of being able to look at my email and not be completely overwhelmed because there's no surprises, right? I'm on top of it already. So for those of you who don't have that right now, I highly recommend you go back and look at the email webinar that Dennis prepared, that Dennis and I put together a while back. It was probably like 6 months ago, right? Or more than that.
A year ago.
Yeah, a year ago. Go back in there, take a look at that and implement that. And then you're going to feel a whole bunch more peace, to be honest. And so the next thing is start to control your time, right? Okay. So now you've got your focus block, right? You've done your self-care, you're in your focus block. This is where you start to look at your both your email tasks here, right? The things that you said that you were going to do before, and hopefully these will be quick, right? You can just take care of those inside of your focus email, inside of your focus block. Or you also have all of these things. These are your tasks that you've created for yourself in Asana. And I highly recommend not making time blocks because you're going to forget about it. Here in Asana, the way for you to sort through some of these tasks, whenever you come up with something, is you can come up with this little blue task. You can add something and literally very easily type in, for instance, here, I'm going to say, I'll call Dennis and discuss, new fund potential, check materials, so on, right? And I can go ahead and assign a due date for this to be, it's important to me, but it's not urgent, right? So maybe I do it next on the 30th, right? And once that's done, I can add in my team members, right? I can go in here and I can say, all right, I actually want to have Lan or my assistant in on this as well. So let me add him, right? And then of course I'm going to add Dennis as well because I want him to contribute here for this. And then I can say, what is this project? Projects, returns, etc. And then I have the ability to walk through this and have the conversation and keep everything related to the task in here. I don't have to worry about this task disappearing or a time block, right? I have a due date. And so every time that I'm looking at my tasks here, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got to do this one. There's this one that has to be done by Tuesday. So I'm using Asana as a simple place for me to look at all of my priorities in one place, all of the activities that I know I need to do in one place. And then I can assign priority. If I think that this one right here is just not that important to me, or maybe this one is just, that isn't important to me, then maybe I'll move it out a little bit. And then I can start tackling some of this other stuff over here that's a higher priority. So I'll pause for just a second. Dennis, what do you think, man?
No, I love this stuff. I incorporate Asana and my emails, but nowhere as efficiently. I feel like you would be like in a small amount of pain if you don't do it this way, where I'm like, I star my emails like you taught me, and then I work off the stars versus going into Asana. I think it's better than nothing, but I do think if I followed this religiously, I think my life would be a few times better. And then I just want to let everybody know I did post the link to your email webinar in the chat.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Yeah. The other thing I was going to say about this too, Dennis, is I know it sounds painful to have to like go to a whole nother program, but what happens if you're out and about, right? And you get a text from someone and they're like, oh crap, I need to do that. How are you going to remember to do that? So the thing that you can do is on the phone, right? On your phone, that you can download the Asana app, and there's a big red plus button in the lower right-hand corner. And all you got to do is basically copy that text and drop it into that project or drop it into that description. And then you can come up, you could do something later with it, right? You can basically prioritize it because it's in one place. Otherwise, you'd have to email yourself and then you'd have to star it. And it just seemed a little bit of a waste. Because the whole point is if you have a virtual assistant, right, you want to be able to seamlessly get your tasks in one place where you can make the decision to delegate them. And so the next step of this is now that you have the tasks for yourself in here, right? Like you're importing them in directly from your emails as needed. And by the way, Dennis, a little bit of help. If something is going to take you 2 hours or more to do, like if it's an underwriting assignment, move it to Asana. If it's going to be an investor outreach or maybe a preparation for a presentation, move it over to Asana.
Do you time block Asana, like actually managing your Asana? Because I
Yes,
feel like sometimes there's just so much stuff on Asana. I'm like, I don't want to even put anything else on it.
Yeah, to be honest, very good. To be honest, I did have a 15-minute block of time when I was setting up the habit that was right at the beginning of my focus time. And I would get a reminder that says, I would get an actual reminder on my watch or on my phone that says, check your Asana. And the other thing is too, is that Asana will actually email you telling you what tasks are due today every day if you want that, right? And then you can really pay attention to that. So that's the cool thing about using a centralized like project management software like this. There's ClickUp, there's Monday.com, there's all kinds of different platforms you use. And honestly, it doesn't really matter which one, but I like Asana just because it's very intuitive and very simple once you get the hang of it. Now, the next thing I was going to say, guys, is I have this workflow right here with my assistant. So you can see here that there's a backlog, there's an in progress piece, and then there's a ready for approval piece. Okay. Anytime that I have something that I want to assign to my assistant to help me with, I'm simply going in here to my tasks, right? Let's say, for instance, this is something, or let's see what would be easier. Maybe this one. This would be something that's easy for my assistant to do. Okay. My process would be, I would put a realistic due date in. Maybe I'd call this Saturday or maybe on Tuesday next week. And then I would assign this to him. And then I would add this to the workflow project because now it will show up in the backlog for him. It would go from my tasks over to him. And then what I would do is if I don't have a standard operating procedure made for this, then what I would do is I would go to Loom right here. And then I would screenshot me doing this. And then I would simply grab that video link and just drop it right in here and say, here's the instructions for what I want you to do. If this is something that the VA already does or your assistant already does for you, you can see how easy this would be, right? You basically just change the name over and then you send it over to them, make sure that it's on the right date and that it's in the project that they're looking at for their workflow. But you can see here that it went from email to my tasks for me to process and to figure out what to delegate and what to do, and then over to my virtual assistant, basically.
And Derek, you're able to do all this with the free version of Asana, correct?
Yes, this is all free. Yep. Yep, good call. I appreciate you making that clarification. So that's how it works. And the reason that I'm stressing the importance of this is because inside of your calendar, you're going to want to do all of those Asana tasks right in here inside of the focus time. So whenever, you're going to take a look at your Asana and you're going to say, okay, what do I need to do for my business? What goals am I focused on? And what stuff is day to day that I need to look at? And at the beginning of your focus time, you're going to take a look at your emails, take a look at your Asana list, right? And say, what is the best use of my time? Or what have I already pre-decided my top priority is based on the due date right here, while glancing at what's coming down the pike soon. So this way, instead of having little time blocks for all these things that you said you were going to do as reminders later on, now if you're looking at this platform every day and you have the ability to add a virtual assistant to come in and take off some of these things from your plate, now you have a centralized place to capture all your tasks and all your projects. This is what I recommend.
Why do you have duplicates, for example, like active campaign lead?
Yes,
Is it,
good question. So those are actually Zapier automations. So this is actually an automation that came in from ActiveCampaign to Asana. So I've tried to find a way to make them all merge into one, but I couldn't quite do it. So this is the best that it gets.
got it. Very cool.
Yeah. And by the way, for people who don't know Zapier, I can show this a little bit later on if we have some time, but super powerful tool, highly recommended. Dennis, I'm sure you're a fan as well because you like to tinker with these things also.
You actually showed me Zapier, so you could take all the credit.
Yeah, no, it's all good. That's how I like to approach this. Okay. And so I think beyond those two blocks, like the morning block or your whatever your self-care block is. And I think, Dennis, for you, what I would recommend is if you can get like an exercise in and then do a little bit before your kids wake up or before you get going, take a look at your task lists before your kids wake up. Maybe that's your only focus time is you just take a look at your email, take a look at your Asana and be like, yeah, I want to try to get that done today, that needs to get pushed out, that type of thing. Then you can go over to your kids, right? Take care of what they need, take care of yourself, take a shower or whatever you do with the rest of eat your breakfast, do whatever you want to do. And then that way you at least know what you're going to be doing today and you can set the tone for the rest of the day that way.
No, I like that approach because I find that when you break up the focus time, it's hard to get back into focus. I really try to get up at 5 and work from 5 to 7, but sometimes I wake up 5:45, sometimes 5:30.
Sure.
And I find that if I'm only working 5:30 and my kids wake up a little bit early, I'm only really working 1 hour. And then by the time I get the kids back at 9:15, like I'm exhausted. I feel I was up all day, but I got so little done. And then it adds like this frustration where no, I think that is a great idea to try to maybe eliminate some emails, but reorganize your Asana, and then at 9:15 you start the focus time.
Yeah. Give yourself a break. And that's the other thing too, is when you're going through this process, I think it's important to be realistic as to what you can accomplish. Because you and I know someone, I just spoke with him today. He was in the same group who has taken this and gone to it with steroids. Like he has like a million Asana tasks. And I think his problem is not being able to delegate them all. I think you know who I'm talking about. And I have to like, because there's a ton of ways that you can go about this. And what he has really stresses me out too. Seeing all of these, like a ton of line items that are due, like he has 40 things that are due today because he'll keep pushing things out to be today. I think the important thing is to realize that you're only human and you can only do a certain amount of things in the middle of the day. And so as you get better and better with this, you'll start planning out your due dates with these over time so that you can actually realistically hit them. Okay. And this for me is pretty realistic. All of these things. This is the pace that I work at.
How are you with incorporating your partnerships in this?
Yeah, so the partnerships are not in this. The partnerships are in Slack. They're in a different platform. And inside my partnerships, I just basically I do tasks for myself. And then inside of Slack, they've got really cool things like you can pre-send messages, right? Or you can set up reminders for people so that you can remind like your partner to do this thing in the past, right? Like I could go into, like, for instance, if I go in here and I go to, let's see, if I go to this one, right? And I want to, where is it here? Remind me about this. I think there's a custom way I thought there was a way that you can reassign a reminder. Let's see, maybe not. But you can remind yourself about this, and then a little bot will pop up when the time that you set, and then it'll come up and say, "Oh, you're supposed to do this or do something like that." You can do that within Slack. For anything that's a project, you can obviously export this as well into Asana. So it's very easy for you to keep track of that stuff. I'll be honest though, I don't use this feature very much just because a lot of the questions that come through here is more communication, and we get that all done that way.
Now, are your partners aware with your like time blocks? Do they know not to call or text you at between 8:30 and 12?
Yeah, see, that's the other thing too, is that I just won't answer. All
right, but I'm gonna have to test that out.
I encourage everyone to start taking that path, that not unless it's an emergency, right? If it does come up and it's obviously an emergency, then of course you've got to respond. But I'm also very much of the mantra too, Dennis, that it's fair game throughout the day. If a 30-second task comes in, you could answer that anytime because it's like it's right off your head. It's just you can't let it disturb you in your focus time. So if it is going to disturb you in your focus time, you airplane mode it, you turn off the apps, you turn off the notifications, and it should just be that way. If you're coming to your computer, right, you can choose which apps to turn on, which to turn off, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of cool tech tools that you can do in here, right? Like you can obviously have your phone on do not disturb for a certain schedule. Lots of interesting things you can do. So definitely take advantage of those.
And how religious are you to 8:30 to 12 focus on? Do you ever, oh, I'm tired, I'm gonna take a nap at 11:30? Or you're like, nope, can't do 11:30, not today. I can nap at 12, but not 11:30.
It's all about the priorities. If self-care is needed, then I'll take the self-care. But I try not to make a habit of it, right? And if there is a habit of me like cutting my focus time short for some reason, then that's a bigger symptom of a bigger problem, right? Maybe it's burnout. Maybe I'm being too unrealistic about what I'm trying to do. That's the overall approach there that I think. So if you absolutely need a break, then you can't, everything is flexible and fluid. This is just what we strive to do. We're trying to design your ideal day or your ideal week. And most of it is going to be in your focus time. For me, a 4-hour focus time is what I need in order to get all the things processed that I need to do. But for some people, it could be 1 hour or even 2 hours, right? It just depends on where you are and what you're trying to accomplish. And
Have you played
your aptitude.
Have you played around with different focus time durations?
Yeah, I have. This is what works for me because it allows me to get all my emails sent out and get like all of my tasks done and work the tasks that I want to work within a certain period of time. And then anything after that is just kind of money, right? Like I'm in the green, so to speak, right? Like I've taken care of everything that I wanted to take care of that day. And then now I'm off to my office hours, which is then allowing other people to book time on my calendar. So that brings me to the last piece, right, of this system, not really a system, but more of a philosophy, is then you've got your Calendly. And with your Calendly, you got to be like, I love this tool so much that I paid for the paid version. Of course, there's a free version that allows you one event type. And inside your event type, you can set like the duration and the amount of time, like when you're going to be available. Over in here, you can see these are the available times for me to meet. And you can see here, because I'm getting ready to go to Japan, I've already preset these as of today for a time that makes sense that's in the US and in Japan, right? This is late evening in Eastern time and early evening and late afternoon in Pacific. So it's like the evening time. It's only time that works and that works with me while I'm in Japan and when my consult time works. So I'm going to have to be flexible in order to keep me having conversations move and when people can talk with me while I'm traveling. So there's an example right there of me having my office hours start, my self-care starts, then I have my office hours, and then I'm going to have to do my focus time after this or in the evening while I'm in Japan, because this is, let me see if I actually have that. Yeah. So here you can see when I'm out there and traveling, which I'll be out there for 3 months, you can see that this is quite literally the only time that works for most people. You're familiar with Calendly, right?
Yeah, I use just the one version.
Okay.
The basic version.
So I highly recommend anyone who wants to like get their office hours out there to talk with other people. These are the times that you book. So even when other people send you their time, like they send you their Calendly or you try to get something booked up, if you can at all possible, please protect your first two priorities and open up your anytime that you want to your office hours, right? And if you really want to get assertive with this, you can insist on other people booking on your time, right? If you can. And that's up to you to figure out, okay, do I open up 1 hour or 2 hours? And do I open up 30-minute blocks of time for them in my Calendly for them to book 30 minutes? That way you can stack your right one after another so that you're getting all of your stuff done in a shorter period of time through the middle of the day. I think that's pretty basic, but it helps to call this out and explicitly show it, right? For me, you can see here that like my time is spread out throughout the whole like edge of the week, but this is usually not the case. Generally, my day ends with me talking with my assistant. That's just because he's in the Philippines and I have to do it because that's when he wakes up. Otherwise, like this is like 5 a.m., 2 to 5 a.m. over there. As a matter of fact, here's Japan time. You can see what that time is looking like for him. Pretty close to the Philippines, but you can see here on the secondary time calendar or this timeline, this is what time it is for him. And of course, I'm eating dinner and doing most self-care throughout this band right here. So usually it's my afternoons that I open up. And these days, since I'm really busy, I just have my office hours open for people to book anything, but I'm continuing to work on my focus tasks and then just sprinkling in some self-care here and there, doing some dinner, lunch, things like that. Not everything has to be like brute scheduled because you want to have some flexibility, but you want to also make sure that there's like a rhythm to the days that you're in this. And like I said, you can block out one entire day, right? Just for you to do focus time and self-care. And I highly recommend doing that for most people, honestly. And then my wife was recommending an entire week out of the month.
Just focusing.
I've been finding that to be very difficult, but I know that it can be done. And those weeks are awesome. I got to be honest, like knowing that there's no calls booked, I'm just doing mastermind calls. So I can just really focus on me and the business. There's no podcast, there's no anything because the whole thing is blocked. That's pretty cool. There's one feature that I wanted to show in here too, Dennis. If you look in, I believe that there's an out of office function. I forgot exactly how to do this, but I think there's a way to show like completely out of office. And then what it does is it basically declines invitations. So if anyone sends you anything inside that time block that you put as an out of office in the Google Calendar, it'll send back a message saying, oh, sorry, this is my focus time. I'm out of office right now. I forgot exactly where that was, but I know that there's a way to do that. Working hours. Yeah, it's somewhere in here. I can get that if anyone is interested on social media or wherever. I can try to pull that up. But I did have that at one point in here. I don't know why. Let me see. Maybe I can just try doing it like this. I just want to block this whole week out. Yeah, I don't see it here. Busy. Yeah, no, that's not it. Anyway, sorry. I was getting distracted because I wanted to try to be able to do that.
Asana for tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. The whole day, right? The entire day. Yeah. No. So yeah, I'll not fiddle with this, but yeah, there's definitely a way to do it. And I'm just a big fan. So whatever you use, make sure you're using a calendar. I know there's plenty of people out there that are using pen and paper or don't use a calendar at all, but this is super, super important for you to start looking at, because when you have Calendly and people can book your time, suddenly you don't want to have an appointment or something while you're on a plane. So you have to start living by your calendar, unfortunately, in this way. But I think, Dennis, you pretty much live by your calendar, right?
These days?
Yeah.
I do a pen and pad sometimes. Even if it's on my calendar, there is a satisfaction of crossing something out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think there is too. And for me, you have to settle with in here. If you go in and do this, for instance, there's a little unicorn, or I don't know what that thing is. That's what you have to settle for, unfortunately, in Asana. But they want you to check stuff off as complete, just like you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I do the check on Asana, but that little unicorn isn't as satisfying.
What about this? Because you can add subtasks, right? Like you can say task A, and then you can put task B. When you check off these, that's pretty cool, right? To have that you're crossing it off. Not just me. That's just me. Okay.
But one thing I do want to say, you have a very logical workflow from everything from like how work comes in and how work comes out. And I think a lot of people's version of this isn't as clean. There's always a bottleneck somewhere, and you figured out how to eliminate this bottleneck where every step has a logical next step.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think a lot of people have this as their notepad. Like this is what they just have this down on a piece of paper, which is okay. But what happens if inspiration strikes you and you're out and about, which has happened to me so many times, or you remember to do something, or someone texts you, or you can just pull out the phone and you can just really quickly add a task, right? So that way it shows up on this for you when you're ready to start figuring it out on your next focus time.
No, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
How do you deal, and I'll open up the questions after this to anybody who's on this call, but how do you deal with fires that come up during the day? Like, where do they take priority?
Yeah.
in the Asana, or you just do them and then is that dangerous to go off script? How do you deal with the fires that come up
Yeah.
on the day? Let's say someone's plumbing doesn't work for 2-3 units and it hits you in the middle of the day. How do you deal with that fire?
Seems like you read my mind, man. Yeah. So when something like that comes up, it is obviously something you need to address as soon as you find out about it, right? There's no real perfect way to deal with fires. I think everyone has just got to do it. It's just an urgent item that has to get done right then and there. So if it's something that you notice that needs to get done, then you have to drop everything and do it. That's just the nature of fires. I think for me though, like the number of fires that I've had has dropped off dramatically just because I'm building the system to proactively help me from even getting a fire in the first place. Like, for instance, a fire would be, right, if your CPA is asking you a question about taxes and it's like March 14th, and the idea was to file without an extension, which is never smart, but just like there's a time frame, right? Like that's associated with things, then you just got to do it, man. I don't really have too much advice there because it's not really, there's nothing to plan. It's just a very urgent item that just needs to get done. You
I
know,
feel like next year you'll have a perfect like app for it. You're like, oh,
yeah,
I have the fire app. That's it. I
I
got it.
don't. I wish that I did. I wish that I could invent the easy button and just have everyone click that all day. But there will always be fires and there will always be things that come up that will disturb this workflow. But in general, you're just trying to design your day to be as efficient and fluid and close to ideal as possible. And I think that like by looking at your calendar is something that you want to not just wait to live the ideal life, you want to bring it to today. Bring your ideal life to what you have right now, and then just allow the system to work. Start logging all of your tasks in here so you can clearly prioritize and delegate them, right? Even if it's delegating it to yourself or to a team member, that could be even your spouse if they're on your team, or that can be an assistant that you have good working relationship with, maybe someone on Fiverr, right? That you've done a few things with. You might be able to bring them into this Asana workflow, and then that's how you assign work to them. And one thing that I'll say too about like when you do delegate this work, you can see here, for instance, all of these items that I have, I've got all of these topics, like they're laid out. We discuss this twice a week. Me and my assistant get together and we talk about these in person. And so this is what we look at whenever we're talking about their tasks: is what is left to do, what's their due dates, what's in progress, and what's ready to be done. And so you can basically at one glance see what they're working on and what's done and what still needs to be completed. And anything that does need to get done, there's usually a conversation that takes place inside here, right? Like you can have a conversation or you can update, you can draw, like you have a discussion inside of the task instead of sending emails back and forth, right? So I hope that makes sense. This is why I really like Asana, is that everything related to that one task just sticks inside of this task here. You can have the conversation right inside the card.
No, I love it. It does make sense. Now, I know you said like fires, disturbances are natural. Do you create Asana cards to go over those disturbances at the end of the week? Like after they're put out, to figure out maybe there is a systems that you could put in place so that same incident happening again isn't a fire.
That's a really good point. I don't have a process for that, but I really like that. And the truth of the matter is, Dennis, is that I really like, to be honest, fires are a very rare occurrence. I think for us, it happens maybe once every 2 months, I would say. True fires, right? Because, like, for instance, in that plumbing leak issue, most likely the property manager is doing some emergency work already. So, because they don't have time to even wait for approval, and we've delegated that to them already. But if it keeps recurring, then yes, that would be something that we would set up a system for. Yeah. But admittedly, I don't have a formal process to review all of those things at the end of the week. It just is there. And then I would also say too, is that you can create like workspaces for your individual apartment buildings, right? If like you have an apartment or you have different projects, and you can create a workflow just like this that has different projects so that you can track stuff that was committed to you from the property manager or from your team members. And then if you are really smart about this, then you can do some fancy integrations, or you can have a virtual assistant on the call with you, making these tasks while you're talking, which we've been known to do also. So
Like,
as you're talking, like in the middle of a meeting, you can say, hey, Mr. Assistant, please make sure this is an action item, that we get this apartment turned in the next 3 weeks, put the due date for 3 weeks from today, and we'll monitor this apartment number XYZ.
that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Derek, let me open it up. If anybody has any questions, feel free to just put it in the chat.
Yeah, I know this one is a little bit less less, how should I say this? This is more like theoretical and more high level, but that's where it all starts, is that you need to be aligned and make sure that the things that you're doing is working towards having a more efficient day. And
Got
so
it. And
it starts with your mind.
would you recommend this from someone who is not an operator? And let's say is just an investor, or someone who has a 9 to 5.
Yeah, I think so. If you want to have a little side project that you're going to work on, right? I think this is a perfect thing for you, especially if you're looking to get actively involved in real estate, whether you want to do some flips or some joint ventures on some small multifamily, or if you want to start your business or help support your spouse's business, right? This is a great way for you to get involved and organize your day and figure out like what would be an ideal day for you, right? In general. And so it doesn't have to be complicated. Obviously, when you're at work, that's going to be most of your focus time. Like your focus time is going to be things that you have to do for your job. So, you're going to have a focus time that's basically a second priority to your own focus time. And then your consult hours, just for me and for you, Dennis, it was like after work, right? It was like 5 p.m. and beyond. Those were your office hours. And then you had your primary focus time, which is right after your miracle morning, your self-care. And then you had your job focus time. And that was just like, you're not able to answer calls or just fires, basically, you could answer. But that's how I handled that.
So would you recommend, if anybody's listening and has a 9 to 5, that they tell their boss that this is focus time, so that they have to leave them alone? Per Derek Clifford?
I do. Yeah. And I'm going to get a whole bunch of hate mail, but yeah, that's what I would know. Obviously, like you gotta do what you got to do when you're working. And if you really want to like have a side business going that takes time and energy from you, I think you just got to find some space in your calendar somewhere where you can do it and be consistent. That's where like the sustainability of this comes in. You got to make sure that you do something that you can stick to over time. For me, I talk about the 4 C's, Dennis, in a lot of the podcast episodes that I've been on. They are consistency, clarity, coaching, and connections. And whatever one of those 4 C's you can just lean into, the other 3 are going to follow as a natural consequence of succeeding in business. If you are extremely organized and you fall down the consistency path, then you can be consistent and set some time blocks and really get something done over a long period of time by being consistent. Or you can hire a coach, right? Or you can be super clear on your goal, so clear that you can taste it. It's like Napoleon Hill, chapter number 1, which is a burning desire, right? If you have that imprinted into your head, that C will force the others to go. And then if you have connections, right? If you're hanging out with Dennis all the time or hanging out with real estate investors who are investing, that C is going to bring out all the other 3 that eventually will need to come into the picture for you to be successful in whatever it is that you're doing. So if you're a consistent person like me, leverage that, right? And go into the office an hour early before everyone else does. So you can work on your real estate business or your Amazon business or whatever it is that you want to work on. Or even if you want to work on yourself, you just want to increase your mindset, wake up earlier, and maybe you don't know what you want to do as a business, but you know that you want to do something. Well, start there. First, get your time block, right? And inside your time block, in being consistent and your focus time at the office, you can use that time just to ask the question, what do I want to do for a business? And just do it. Just continue to do that. And eventually you'll get ideas forming. And then the other 3 C's will come in and you'll be there in no time.
Love it. And Derek, in terms of what we just went over compared to your course, is this 1% of the course that you put together, or is this 25%? And if we have 4 more years of these webinars, we can knock out your course. What's with the course? This
is a lot of the theory behind this, because it's very easy for me to say this is what you should do, but everyone's cases is different. And so inside the course, we have mastermind groups where I'm actually interacting with everyone on a live Q&A and figuring out what everyone's personal situation is and problem solving that to figure out, okay, how would I do this given a person's situation? This is, I would say, maybe somewhere around 5%, 10% of the overall thing. It's 8 weeks, and this was covered in one of the weeks, but in a lot more detail, a little bit more organized, and with a really cool presentation, which looks like this. Let me show you. Looks something like this.
It looks like a nice Prezi.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Lots of good stuff. And then going to the screen and then conclusions and then some homework. Yeah.
It looks good.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
So if people want to learn more, what's the best way?
Yeah, just email me, derek@elevateequity.org. I'm here. That's the easiest way. Or just follow me on social media. LinkedIn is a big place for me. I'm always posting stuff there, although we're also on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok even. So just reach out to us, direct message me, say that you came from Dennis's place, and all good from there.
Do you want to post your email in the chat?
Yeah.
It's probably the easiest.
I'll just go ahead and type it in real quick.
Are you doing those funny little TikTok videos?
Yeah,
as well?
yeah. I'm doing as much as I can. Like,
That's terrible to hear.
You know what my process is? Like, I generated a list of 60 ideas and I put them in Asana, and then I have this phone that folds open, right? And so one side I have the notes and the other side is the camera of me. So I'm just making sure that I'm in the frame and I'm outside walking, right? And
I've seen those videos.
Yeah. And I'm just reading, or I have the bullet points and I'm just talking about those bullet points. And then it's one long video. And then my VA goes in and chops them up into like 30-second pieces.
Now, do you ever feel weird when the people walking the dog look at you funny? Like why is this man talking into his phone?
Yeah, it is a little bit strange, but it's worth it, man. I got 3 months of content in an hour. So yeah.
So you go for an hour walk and you're just talking to your phone?
Yep.
Oh man.
1 or 2 long videos, right? And you're just talking into your phone with your earbuds. And then if you have a talented assistant, then they can just chop it up into a whole bunch of videos as long as you're giving the right prompts. Like after I finish shooting that video, I'll be like, okay, video number 2. Okay, video number 3. And I just keep going. So
you come home and your wife is like, what's wrong with your wrist? You're like busy working all day.
That's exactly right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right, Derek, it's the top of the hour, man. I'm going to rewatch this myself. And there's definitely some tinkering that I need to do with my own calendar. And I'll probably put a placeholder for March or April 2024 for part 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the next thing is to go a little bit further into Asana and start to doing, or maybe even Zape. We could probably get into that a little bit more because that's super, super powerful. But let me know how I can help you and your audience. I want to give you guys some bite-sized pieces of what we're doing in the full course. But really excited to share all this stuff with you because everyone talks about internal systems and processes, but no one ever knows what that means.
Actually means, yeah.
So
I'm so excited. Tonight I'm going to go to Asana and just assign you all my tasks.
That's great. I'm just going to go in and push them out. I'm going to keep pushing out the due date. Or I can't guarantee the quality of how well things are going to get done. That's the only unfortunate thing.
You'll be like, I checked everything off. It's all checked.
That's right. It's all done, man.
It's all done.
Yeah.
That's a weight off my shoulders.
For sure. But no, I really think this is going to help all of you guys out there who are looking to get organized. Just start to think about it. It takes time to build the habit. But man, once you're getting into the habit, like it's so great to have a single system where you can delegate, think about stuff, prioritize, create projects, right? And then make even subtasks for you to delegate to other people, right?
I love it.
All right.
Derek, thank you so much for your time. I'm not sure if I'm going to talk to you before Japan, but having a life-worthy trip out there.
Thank you, man. I'm sure that we will. I'll send you some pictures or I'll make them available somehow at some point.
Awesome.
But thanks a lot.
Put that on Asana now.
You got it. Thanks for having me on again.
All right. You got it. Bye.
Bye.